Hey everyone, I'm Tim.
And I'm the only Luddite in the Ozen world, Chris.
And welcome to the OSINT Output.
And Chris always loves the countdowns, so he knows when we're starting.
We already had a countdown? I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, the big numbers that you just saw on the screen. That
I was
countdown.
I was looking at my phone, dude.
All right, so welcome everyone to another bonus episode of the OSINT Output. This is an interview for an individual that Chris found, connected with.
He found me.
You guys found each other. That's awesome. We always love it when that happens. Connected through, I think, social media, right?
Yep.
So
One of the things that I hate most.
yes, and you're doing a much better job of it recently than I am, but I'm going to let Chris take it away. So Chris, if you would, introduce our guest.
Yeah, so this is Jay Heisler. He's I think he's a freelance journalist. I read some of his stuff before I had met him because I think he had an article or two in the Small Wars journal and a couple of other things, but I don't want to steal his thunder, so we're going to turn it over to you, Jay, and let you introduce yourself. Like, what's your background, your education?
Yeah. So I'm happy that my writing was something you're familiar with before we met. That normally happens if that happens to me. That happens to me here in Nova Scotia, where it's not very often you have a Voice of America Canada correspondent, or something like that, living in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the place where Trailer Park Boys is from and about, and it's the middle of nowhere of under 500,000. Most of my recognition day to day comes in either locally in Atlantic, Canada, or in Washington, D.C. and Ottawa, where I can get quite a bit of recognition. Beyond that, I'm not like a widely known journalist in Canada because I focus on American stuff. And Voice of America was not actually meant to be broadcast in Canada. It's not meant to be broadcast in the United States either, because Voice of America's mandate is that you're not supposed to propagandize to the United States. It's actually against the legal mandate of Voice of America, and additionally, it's not supposed to be broadcast in allied countries like Canada. However, Voice of America did need a Canada correspondent because there was a lot of interest, and they had me call myself a Canada reporter, not correspondent. There was a lot of interest in immigration to North America, and Voice of America had me covering up to 3 times a month. Had me covering basically the immigration situation and the international student situation, and the refugee situation, and the education situation, and the newspaper situation in Canada, very, very frequently, enough labor to account for a full-time job, albeit with part-time pay. And I'm so grateful for that. I got hired in 2020 at the height of the pandemic, and I worked straight up until this year when Voice of America was defunded in the United States, and in spectacularly collapsed. But I plan to work with him again. And you would think this would go against political sensitivities in Canada right now, with trade tensions rising between Canada and the U.S. But it doesn't actually. A senior military officer I'm friends with said in a crowded party, actually in front of everybody, that he thinks I should go back to Voice of America when it gets rebuilt up, even if it has a new political slant. So I'm like, okay, great. Well, that is my kind of long-term plan to get my journalism career back on track. Is if Voice of America is rebuilt and start rehiring and start commissioning new work, I'll go back to it. But in the meantime, I'm going back to school to get an online master's in education to continue to expand my teaching work. I teach part-time at a university, and to continue to expand into adult education. And if my career completely collapses and I never get any journalism or university teaching work again, well, I can always be qualified to be a high school teacher, and there's a labor shortage. I'm 40 years old, and you can reinvent yourself. I'm still getting good journalism publications. Just actually last month, published with the Canadian think tank, and that was co-authored with the former CIA targeting officer, Jake Robinson. He has that on his LinkedIn. I know Jake in person from my visits to Washington, D.C. He's in the same Signal group that I've been running after the last couple of years, Signal OSINT group. And I know Chris is in that as well.
Yep.
And so Jake has been a godsend in my career, and he co-authored something that was published in Open Canada, which is the journal of the think tank Canadian International Council. This is not a French think tank. This is actually a think tank that has a reputation for being Trudeau liberals, very close to the liberal government in Ottawa. Is a national think tank with offices with offices in every major city. And my editor for that is actually going to be in town on Tuesday, so I'm going to go to his talk. I'm on the board, actually. I'm on the board of directors for their Halifax branch. I'm out to report on the immigration. I see immigration as a bipartisan issue. And I'm out to report on peace and conflict issues. Like, that was my master's in peace and conflict studies. And so that was the nature of my reports in Small Wars Journal, U.S. Naval Institute Proceedings, stuff like that, CNBC, is because really I don't see partisanship as really helpful for what I'm doing. And I've had day-to-day work very, very closely with people across the political spectrum. We're talking from the very far left to the very far right. When you're active in signal groups, you just can't differentiate. And it's not up to you to
Awesome, man. So one of the things, especially about OSINTs, is managing certain OSINT groups and leveraging those and engaging with them. You've talked a little bit about it so far. What is your primary goal when joining these OSINT groups? Is it to learn more about news that's occurring around the globe, learn techniques, engage with other people, and develop your network? Like, what's your primary goal when joining OSINT groups and being a part of those communities?
Well, I had not even used Signal until 2021 when the Afghan evac happened and American and Canadian veteran charities deployed back to Afghanistan after the fall of Kabul to get Afghan allies to U.S. forces and Canadian forces out of the country and to neighboring countries like Pakistan, Central Asia, and other kind of transit countries. And so I was added to the Signal group ecosystem from that, and I took a liking to it, and people took a liking to me. And so I founded my own Signal group on China-Taiwan issues, and then that was so I founded the Canada group. And there's at this point, I got a lot of experience in the Ukraine war, the Ukrainian war effort, because one of the biggest Signal groups came about from UNCN, the Ukraine NGO Coordination Network. And they were an umbrella organization for a lot of charities, veteran charities from the U.S. and Canada deploying to Ukraine. I really took an active role in that, helping people getting media support and stuff like that. And so from there, a system of Signal groups sprouted out around it, dedicated to each conflict or each natural disaster. For example, today I was just thrown into Venezuela Signal group. I was just sprouting out around the Venezuela operations by the U.S. I was really grateful they threw me in that without asking me. There was no like, hey Jay, do you want to join this? Or hey, does anyone want to join this? And I messaged them first. No, they just chucked me in as one of the baseline of people that they put in all of them at the outset. So that's how kind of trusted I am in that community. And so I've been running the Canada group since 2022. And that's been used for a lot of coordination on stuff like natural disaster response, networking on Ukraine, people getting to know each other in person. So it's really been a great experience. Is it useful for getting to know what's going on in the news better? Absolutely. I feel so much more informed in the Signal groups than I do reading the news, actually. I still read the news, both to kind of keep up with what the average person thinks is going on, but also to keep up with stuff that the Signal groups don't really care about, like debates and trends that are more of interest to me as a progressive art school professor. and so I think reading the news is still valuable, but the aggregation of news articles and tweets and other OSINT in the Signal groups is so far beyond what people realize. Like when something happens, I usually find out about it before it's in the Twitter to journalism pipeline. I usually find out about it when it's like seconds after it's on Twitter and minutes to hours before it's in mainstream news. And that's really exciting rush to follow global events like that. I really appreciate the opportunity to do it, and I really appreciate all the people in the community.
Nice. So you did mention this a couple times. You're a professor or an instructor at a university. What do you teach, man? What's your claim
I
there?
teach a mental health advocacy course, actually. As a radical politics course that was popular at the art college. But I additionally have done mental health advocacy talks I was paid by Air Canada, Canada's main airline, to fly to Toronto last year in September, I think, and to audit their flight experience because they found out that I was a mental health advocate and a journalist in Canada. And I hadn't set foot on an airplane in 6 years. So this embarrassed Air Canada. They wanted to get my thoughts on flying, so they paid for me to fly to Toronto and tell them what I thought. So I had a lot of nasty stuff to say actually, but I can't think of it now. I sworn to secrecy. But I was really grateful for their for them giving me that platform. I spoke at their conference. I was voted the most popular speaker at the conference by their attendees. And so yeah, I've had mental health advocacy stuff like that. I've run seminars through Dalhousie University to human resources offices. I run a continuing education course at Dalhousie University, but my regular course is at NASCAD, Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, where it's a radical mental health advocacy course. It's very popular with activist students. And I use my Voice of America political propaganda experience to young activists kind of hone their message on mental health advocacy. And that's got me nearly universally positive student reviews for the last couple of years in a row. And I've been doing that since 2020 as well. And so I'm going to keep with teaching as journalism kind of ebbs and flows. I can keep with teaching as a kind of baseline career just to make it all work out.
So as far as journalism goes, one of the things that I'm always interested to hear about is some of the tools that you guys have access to or use on a daily basis. You've already mentioned your community, right? Signal's great for that. Getting early warning for events, that's awesome. What tools do you normally use other than, basic search engines? And then additionally, what are some roadblocks you encounter while conducting investigations?
Well, guys in the Canada group that I've been running include employees and representatives and even spokespeople for stuff like Maltego, Social Links. Larry Cameron has done Social Links lectures on the dark web and stuff like that. In fact, and that's how Larry and I met. I was invited to an online lecture of his. And then I recognized his accent was local, and then I found out he lived like down the street from me, basically here in Nova Scotia. Persian friends ever since. And so there's a lot of the big open softwares kind of operate in the Signal groups or have people with some kind of tenuous or direct relationship with them in the groups. I stay out of that because, I have an expired private investigator's license from when I was an advanced security guard, but I don't want to get involved in kind of real investigations without a kind of official mandate because I've been a defense contractor, a military contractor in the U.S. and Canada, but I don't feel like deputizing myself to do investigations myself. I'm just more the kind of ringleader in the Signal group ecosystem. Yeah, this stuff. But I learn a lot from that.
So as far as some free tools that are really, really crucial for your job, especially for searching for people, because that's one of the things that me and Chris have done in the past. We both worked for the Department of Defense, the Department of War now, trying to find people overseas and trying to hopefully get that information in a realm that our partners can view it as well. What are some of your favorite tools to use to try to uncover identities if you're ever tasked with that?
Well, this has happened a few times, for example, in anti-human trafficking when somebody went missing and we were looking for them. Now I didn't ask what tools people were using, but people were using that in the Signal groups. And I can say that as a journalist, the only tool that I'm better at than anybody else is the HUMINT, probably. I do more HUMINT than OSINT by a pretty wide margin. My OSINT experience is mostly just rallying people in the Signal groups and introducing people, but introducing people is HUMINT. And like I do lots of interviews. Even as my journalism career kind of ebbed and flowed this year, I just kept interviews up to try to keep projects in the air and got a few good publications. I published a few high-level interviews in a friend's blog, including with the former UK ambassador to the Caribbean, who was the Consul General in Toronto here in Canada, and a New Zealand expert in investigations of lone wolf shootings, cool stuff like that. Like I just nonstop interview and just keep building my network and keep introducing people when they need each other. And from that, I think I can say that the most underrated OSINT technique has got to be HUMINT. In fact, before I hopped on this call, maybe 5 minutes earlier, I was messaged by my friend Edward Ma, and he is a paramedic here in Halifax, and he was messaging me to complain that so many young people are unemployed in tech because they never networked, they never learned networking, and the huge onslaught of unemployed people in tech and IT fields has a lot to do with the fact that there's a toxic culture around networking where people are deterred from doing it by like TikTok videos and by like viral stuff on LinkedIn, as if it's like this kind of like thing that's like simping or something is pro the system. Nobody wants to network anymore. And he was just saying that a lot of these people, he keeps trying to convince them to network. They would all get jobs if they did. Like HUMINT is everything if you want to really survive in this economy and if you want to thrive in OSINT.
Relationships are really huge in the community because it's such a small environment. With that, one thing I did want to mention was in these groups, and this is a quick follow up, and I'll let Chris jump on next. Whenever this information is presented, you never know for sure in some of these signal groups because they may be using aliases, they may be using usernames you're not familiar with, they could be flat out lying about who they are, and somehow they got invited into one of these secret groups. What are your procedures for fact checking information? Do you just, as you said, like you really do HUMINT really, really well, talking to sources, talking to people? Is that your primary fact checking procedure, going to the first hand source of the information, or do you go and search online as well, trying to find out if it's true or not?
The signal groups only work as well as they do under my control because I keep talking to everybody in them. Especially the more active people, the more active you are in it, the more I talk to you, and the more I get to know you and meet you in person or go for a Zoom or whatever. But even that's not enough. For the most part, in the signal groups are based around support for operations like veteran charities deploying to Jamaica for the hurricane or to Ukraine. So people have very little tolerance for speculation and rumor. It is OSINT so much as it's keeping everyone up to speed, and it's also networking around real world deployments by these veteran charities. And that means that if you are sharing information that people can't themselves trace to a Twitter account that they can judge the veracity of themselves, or to a news article in a foreign newspaper, something that they can judge the veracity of themselves, you're going to get called out. And people get called out all the time. So for the most part, there's a very low tolerance for speculation and rumor. And it's not about speculation and rumor. It's about supporting real world operations. And so it's OSINT only nominally is really just keeping the lights on in deployments for veteran charities, if that makes sense.
One of the things I've always stated ever since I first became an analyst years ago is that one sentence, one paragraph, one analysis presented to a person who can do something about it can change the course of a person's life or even alter a country's, destination, where they're going. So it's really, really important that the information we're presenting is the most accurate that we can find, especially when biases come into play for the publisher and the writer.
Yeah. And so with biases, I'll just follow on to that. As a journalist, how do you avoid, sidestep, how do you mitigate your biases in your research and your writing?
As I said, I stay away from anything hyperpartisan. I have avoided hyperpartisan topics because I don't find them helpful for my career goals as a journalist, which is to focus on bipartisan issues like immigration policy and natural disaster response, and to focus on issues like the university sector, long-term survival. For example, if I do an article about the university sector, I don't focus on divisive social issues and those debates in universities. I focus on university cuts and closures, and about long-term trends for viability of universities on an economic model. I think that is a very positive response. People see me as I don't see it as within my mandate as somebody primarily recruiting on international students and immigrants to be somebody who rehashes the same partisan talking points. And I would undermine trust quite a bit. For example, newcomers to Canada and newcomers to the United States have a wide range of political views. So you can't guess offhand who's going to want to talk to you based on your political opinions. So I think it's better just to abandon partisanship entirely if you're focusing on a policy issue like immigration.
That's one of the things I agree with. And one of the founders of the United States, George Washington, said the same thing, that a two-party system would be the doom of American politics as we know it. So I'm totally against bipartisan parties. Want everybody to know information without regard to one influencing another. I completely agree with that. And going on top of that, talking about this hyper partisan policy that certain people tend to adopt, like only believing what they want to believe. Let's talk about propaganda for a little bit. And we love getting people's definitions because everybody comes from different backgrounds. Can you talk about propaganda a little bit, the definition of it, and then your background in studying propaganda?
Well, first of all, I've had an interesting life experience with that. I am actually the grandson of Oscar Schaftel, who was one of the prominent victims of the McCarthy period. He lost his job teaching at a university in New York City during the McCarthy period, during the Cold War. And I grew up with a stack of FBI files that were mostly redacted on my family, on my grandfather and my mother growing up. And so that was a really, I still have a U.S. passport I used to travel to the U.S., mostly to D.C., where I worked a couple of times, and Louisiana and Portland, Oregon, where I lived for a bit in both. Um, but it was part of my upbringing to be very political, and from there it was natural to develop an interest in journalism and to develop an interest in social media, and from there was a natural progression to develop an interest in propaganda, because when I went back to grad school to study peace and conflict studies after working overseas as a journalist in Lebanon, Kenya, and Southern Sudan, Tbilisi, Georgia. I had all this experience, like as a political practitioner in the field, and then I felt like if I'm never going back to those countries because I came back with PTSD, I might as well do something interesting with that knowledge that isn't just letting it wane. So I redirected that to an understanding of political propaganda, something I can focus on remotely, and that's been my focus ever since.
That's excellent. I think Chris, you brought up this next question about the studying. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. You went to what, LSU, and you studied under, I think it's Dr. Colbert, Dr. David Colbert.
Oh, yeah. Dr. David Colbert wrote the book on propaganda, the Encyclopedia of Propaganda. It's an out-of-print book. It's very rare, but I have it in my apartment. It survived my apartment flooding. It's on my bookshelf. Dr. Colbert was a great mentor to me, and he mentored me remotely for a year or two before I actually came to LSU because because I postponed joining the LSU community by a year. During which time I was flown down to LSU to speak at a conference, and I stayed in his house, and we really got to know the American South. I learned about how the culture works down there, and how the kind of politics works down there. And then he mentored me a bit, especially about Soviet propaganda. And I learned, I think, my primary lesson from Dr. Colbert, who has since passed away, the late Dr. Colbert, that Soviet propaganda has a very kind of front of house, back of house vibe, where the stuff you learn about is very front of house, and then the origins of Russian and Chinese disinformation that's so successful at dividing people today was in the back of house stuff that wasn't really explored as much by academics. So I guess that's my primary takeaway from Soviet propaganda.
Oh, there's a specific word in Russian that they use for Soviet propaganda, and it's escaping me right now. It's like Strovia or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but that's one of the theses that I wrote for a customer back in the day. I had to do analysis on it. That was really, really interesting because I went all the way back to the Cuban Missile Crisis when they were actively lying to their ship commanders about why they were going to Cuba and giving false orders as they were transiting the Atlantic. So even when they showed up, they didn't know why they were bringing these missiles all the way across the Atlantic. So that's a really fantastic course of study. And then both Chris and I are from the South. And speaking about propaganda down there,
Go
political
Bama.
ID.
Go Bama. All right.
Let's calm down. All right.
Beat both Tennessee and LSU this year. We still suck, but hey.
And political
My
ideas.
ancestry on my mother's side is from New York City, but my ancestry on my father's side is from Kentucky, from like hill country Kentucky, where people were still like the town that my extended family lives in. The gas station bathroom is a shack in the front lawn of the gas station with boards missing from it, and then just a hole in the dirt. Like, yeah. That's part of my upbringing.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like that's southeast
I mean,
Kentucky,
I'm-
right there somewhere along the
Yeah.
mountain range.
I'm
You're
gonna-
talking about
I'm going to take a small tangent here. What was your favorite food in Nolens?
New Orleans.
And when you were in Louisiana, what was your favorite? What was the best thing
gosh.
that you ate?
I was a tie between etouffee is
Yeah, etouffee.
etouffee and blackened alligator. I love blackened alligator.
Oh yeah, yep. I'm with you on that, man.
I would eat blackened alligator a lot here if it was served here. And I've had a complaint since I got back to Canada. There's probably a market for these foods. So I was thinking of checking out Cajun restaurants in Montreal, which would have a big Cajun community. I think there's a couple Cajun restaurants in Montreal, and seeing if any of them serve it. Because it would be nice to eat it again, to be honest.
Yeah. And then if you're a sports person, do you prefer hockey or football?
I played soccer in high school. Yeah,
At
I
least he
know.
said the right word. He said soccer. He kind of hit on this already about the Heavily Propagandized world.
Yep.
Okay. Ooh. So one of the things I love analyzing, because I'm on the internet like every single day. If I might be addicted to it at this point. Reddit is my favorite social media. I love going on there. Both Chris and I use Imager pretty regularly. But let's talk about memes and disinformation and propaganda associated with those, because one of the things I saw heavily during the 2016 presidential election that has become a common theme is memes shared on Facebook groups and in these other niche social media or messaging applications. What's the best way to start dissecting disinformation that's spread through those types of media, like either through memes, images, or other long narrative format posts? Like, what's the best way to detect disinformation and go through those, and for propaganda as well?
Oh, this is well timed because I actually have been reading up on memes. I got Cambridge University just released a book for linguists on the linguistics of memes. And I'm not a doctoral level linguist. However, I got the book and I can parse from it some interesting stuff. For example, did you know that the language of memes is so popular because it's calculated to instill this idea of let's move forward. If there's something the meme doesn't like, let's move forward from this and not look back. If there's something the meme does like, let's move toward this. The language of memes is always calculated to imply movement of ideology and movement of somebody's personal benefit directly either away from what they don't like or towards what they do. And this is memes are a really impressive art form, actually. And I, as somebody who teaches in art college, I often am happy to find a really cool meme because there's lots of really cool stuff. However, there's a lot of toxic stuff, and I've nicknamed some like memes that kill, like memes that will just destroy your life, like the worst advice I've ever heard, and that's pretty normal too. I think it's because both sides of the political spectrum got kind of overrun by the incel movement around the last couple of elections. And there's a lot of just life destroying anti-advice in memes. So I wouldn't actually, I like to, I say to my students, I say to anybody, the next time you're like, is this true or isn't this true? Well, it was in that meme. Probably it ain't true.
What do you mean? I've never seen a lying meme.
Yeah, if DiCaprio's on there, it's got to be the truth. Speaking about that, how memes are spread, like that's one of the things I really, really love to follow, like where they're generated from, because back in the day, I Can Has Cheeseburger was probably like the genesis of memes when that little cat first started it, and now we moved on to these other ones going forward. If you were like, let's just do a thought experiment real quick. If you were to try to incite a movement from memes, where do you think the best community to go to would be to first post that? Would it be something like 4chan? Would you go on Discord? Would you go to a Signal group, or would you go to a major social media platform like Facebook or Twitter?
That's a really easy one as a mental health advocate. There's now a patchwork of neurodiversity meme groups. And if you have a bipartisan message that you think is going to reach a lot of people, neurodiversity meme groups are how to do it. You can share something in a neurodiversity meme group and have it shared on the major neurodiversity meme pages within a day. And that includes original content that you made yourself. It's really the rebirth of kind of a bipartisan social ecosystem that's kind of riding out today's times, is these neurodiversity groups. So I know a lot of folk. I have friends who are police officers and friends who are radical activists who all like those neurodiversity groups. So that's where I would go. I think there's a lot to be said for those groups and their kind of cultural role right now.
I absolutely 100% agree. One of the I used to, and I still do, I instruct both a dark web and deep web sources for open source intelligence, but just major overall, I really focus on like dark web and hacking culture for a lot of my students. That's one of the things I tell them is when you go to some of these places, they're so divergent on what they're going to post that you can't be actively drawn into those. And that's why I always teach a mental health block in my instruction now for some of these communities, because you go on there and you see all this content, and one of the common defensive mechanisms that I see for a lot of OSINT practitioners when they start navigating these child sexual abuse material websites, when they start looking at some of these communities full of, just alt-right, harsh white supremacy stuff like this, is you kind of just contain it in your mind and you say, hey, it's just a part of my job, and you don't really want to associate with it. That can affect your mental health long term. So thank you for telling me that, because it's something I agree with 100%.
Actually, I kind of want to follow up on that. Like, what are some of the ways that you suggest, because of your background in mental health advocacy, that OSINT analysts, like the people Tim is talking about, or myself and some of the other people, what are some of the ways you suggest that they prepare themselves mentally before potentially encountering some stuff that nobody wants to see?
OSINT analyst friends say that they regularly see stuff that makes them want to scrub their eyeballs, and I know that there's a real problem with moral injury in the veteran charities who do OSINT. That includes a lot from their in-person deployments as veterans, but moral injury communities are important to plug into. So if you feel you've experienced moral injury or PTSD from work, there's a big community out there in the veteran charities that you can associate with, and you can meet with, and you can get to know. I like to think moral injury is one of the next big fields of mental health advocacy, and there's a lot to be said for that, OSINT specifically. Especially because of the exposure to stuff in the dark web, stuff like that. And it is also, it's not just what you're exposed to, kind of trauma. It's also there's the fear of being kind of exposed to that stuff, and who's watching you back in your online presence. There's a lot to be said for how just terrifying OSINT is, that I think people don't really appreciate. And so I think a new field of moral injury and PTSD will be the OSINT field.
For publicly available information investigation in the past, for the advent of the internet, when you were walking into a war zone, you knew what you were probably going to see, right? Gruesome images, blood,
People with guns, presumably.
Yeah, exactly. But now, whenever you go to a website, something innocuous like, even something innocuous like just Facebook, you can just click on a group and then you see stuff that you wouldn't expect to see on a major social media platform. Talking about that for mental health advocacy, because again, coming from both our veterans backgrounds, it's still somewhat of a stigma within the veteran community and military community. How do you feel in the journalism field that how mental health is taken? Like, is it something that a lot of journalists take seriously, or is it something like, hey, I'll deal with it when I get time?
Journalist mental health is a big discussion topic in journalism. For example, there's community groups, there's nonprofit efforts, there's supposedly an effort in Canada being built up to provide resources for journalists who have PTSD. But I haven't really seen that get off the ground. I think it comes down to be honest, there is a reluctance to talk about mental health in depth if you're an employer. It's easy to talk about mental health in depth if somebody's a former employee who's talking about moral injury or PTSD picked up on the job. If somebody's still an employee, there's a total reluctance among organizations, especially in the private sector, which a lot of journalism is, to look at exactly what is to be done about somebody with a severe mental health issue. The idea that somebody with a severe enough mental health issue is not only unhirable but impossible to maintain on staff is deeply ingrained and deeply kind of baked into the mental health policies in most workplaces. So there's going to be a reluctance to talk about it at all, and they'll be very quick to shut the conversation down. It's one of the ways that workplaces are most toxic right now, actually, is because once you're talking about somebody who's developing from PTSD trauma, something like schizoaffective symptoms in the office, somebody's one solution to it is just fire them, really. And there's no real, and then people will actually tell you, like a progressive person who's all about workplace rights is going to tell you, like, we can't keep somebody on staff forever if they're not coming into the office. So time off, unlimited time off is not something people want to talk about either. Um, Basically, deadlines in journalism, one of the last things in the world an editor wants to hear is that you didn't get something done on time. That's like a common sense mental health advocacy accommodation. So deadlines, time off, workplace meltdowns. Overall, the system sees mental health as incompatible with continued employment most of the time.
So it sounds like mental health advocacy needs more propaganda and memes out there.
Yeah, I've had fancy or meme artists, and their work is pretty good. It's definitely like I think I haven't tried my hand at it myself because I don't really feel confident in the art form yet. But it is kind of cool. I think training my students to do it is going to have a long-term benefit. When I started, I was actually the field I teach is called MAD studies. It's the radical activist approach to mental health. When I started, I was one of only 3 professors of MAD studies in Canada. And there's 3 programs of MAD studies in Canada. One was a professor in Newfoundland, one was me in Halifax, and one was the MAD studies department that founded the field in Toronto, a joint program between Toronto Metropolitan University and York. And now it's in every university in the country, only like 5 or 6 years later. Every university in Canada will have a MAD studies professor or MAD studies grad student or something. So I was really on the ground floor of that. And I like to think I helped make a difference in that regard.
You're saying MAD studies, MAD, is that an acronym?
Yeah. It's a you know how you have like indigenous studies or gender studies, is MAD studies is in for mental health.
Okay. Just want to make
Yeah.
sure I was getting that right. Now
Yeah, I don't normally share the name much because it's very progressive terminology. However, I find a lot of people across the political spectrum really appreciate it because I mean, I feel from people who are more conservative, I've only ever gotten, "Oh, mental health, bless your heart." There's not really a reaction to it that says kind of. I don't really get a vitriolic or kind of violent reaction
What-
to any of my.
I mean, it got beat out of me, so
oh, that's one of the things I was going to talk about. as
yeah.
well.
I didn't get the bless your heart. I got the you're good.
Yeah.
Smack.
One of the things that Chris and I really, really want to do in our field and just in our lives in general is try to normalize talking about mental health and making people, more at ease about it. Because I always akin it to like a physical symptom. So like if you saw somebody cut their leg off if they were chopping wood, you'd be like, "Hey man, go to the hospital and get that fixed." If you saw somebody suffering in front of you from looking at child sexual abuse material every single day, I think it should be normal to say like, "Hey man, it's okay if you go talk to a therapist about that. Don't sit there and rack your brain against the wall because you have to look at these pictures all day long and go to your family." So like I totally like love and advocate for what you do for not only the people in Canada but for the rest of the world as well, because that's actually, if you're thinking about really progressive in North America, I've taught some of these courses in Southwest and Southeast Asia. That's where it gets really finicky talking about mental health because they're like, "Why are we even discussing this?" But yeah, totally understand. And then one of the things that I love going along with is internet
Is-
trolls.
Oh, that's your favorite thing.
I don't normally engage with these people. I love lurking. I love reading about them, and I love calling them out in other mediums. But if you were to see this type of activity start to pop up in different mediums, or they were to engage with you, what's your best way with dealing with them? And then from your perspective, why are they so effective at eliciting responses and making people just mad? Making them upset on the internet.
As I talked about with Chris ahead of this, my approach to internet trolls is to remember you're talking to a human being. Unless they're a bot, you're talking to, if they're a troll and not a bot, you're talking to a human being. And what they probably don't really want to be doing in their life is to be out there humiliating themselves in front of their friends and family. So the more you bait them, really, and the more you keep them talking, the more they're going to resent you. And it's not really an appropriate relationship to have with a troll. My best advice is to shut it down right away. You can shut it down with a rebuttal. You can shut it down with "This is a troll. Don't listen." You can shut it down with whatever. The last thing in the world this person wants is to get drawn into this big thing. I know a lot of guys I know, especially older guys, my age and older, like baiting internet trolls and like posting screenshots and showing how funny they're being with the internet trolls. I don't think that's really appropriate. You're just tormenting somebody really who's a lot of the times has a lot of social pressures or mental illness or even direct warfare adversaries. It's just not an appropriate conduct. I don't feel I think the best thing you can do with trolls is to mark them as a troll and then shut it down.
So just the policy is ignore them, don't engage, and then inform the community about said persona when they start to exist.
Or even just comment to say this is a troll. One of the most effective ways I've seen dealing with trolls is comments that are just like "thanks Russia" or "thanks bot" or "thanks troll." That just shuts it down. That's the smartest thing to do. That's the only time I've ever been impressed with somebody's response to one of them.
Yeah, one of the things I did, especially after 2014, 2015, was when somebody asked me for my personal information or tried to bait me into one of these conversations, I just put "not today, ISIS," and then I went about my way.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that's the most effective. I would say it's the most impressive thing to do publicly, to be honest, because it is just the most accurate and it's the most respectful to the other person's situation. It's also not drawing other people into their little orbit too. So it's the most socially responsible thing to do is that, I believe.
Well, I've had this theory, and I think it's been confirmed by some people, but I just want to put it across from you because both Chris and I consider you an expert in this arena, especially because of your studies and your degrees. Do you feel that arguing with a troll kind of rationalizes what they're saying and then prompts a conversation in a larger arena to invite people into the conversation?
It sucks a lot of people into the conversation quite directly, for all you know. By arguing with a troll, you are platforming them, and that includes helping them network quite directly too. Arguing with a troll just isn't the right move. But additionally, if you're platforming a troll, you are helping the troll in all cases. There's no argument that you can make. There's no counter argument you can make that's going to slay a troll other than this is the troll.
All right, so I generally have two modes when I'm on the internet. One is I'm suspicious of everything that comes across, and the two is I'm very accepting of what other people say. Not accept like what they say if it's derogatory or anything like that, but I accept them as being genuine. So I tend to have a hard time identifying when I'm interacting with a troll until it's gone too far. So what are some of the things that you can look for early on in those conversations to recognize that you're dealing with an internet troll and then shutting it down after that?
I think one of the things is hostility or bad faith arguments. Anything insulting or degrading or disrespectful, you should shut down anyway, because you shouldn't encourage this person to go around doing that to people. So that's the biggest red flag, is just a normal red flag to anybody, really. But beyond that, an especially bad faith argument can be presented as if it were a reasonable debate. This is very common in defenses of abuses of AI. So anytime there's an article about how AI is being abused or AI is toxic or AI is dangerous, you'll get a trillion comments from guys being like, just having a debate here, have you considered that you shouldn't anger the AI, or it might do this, and you shouldn't mistreat an AI like you wouldn't mistreat a pet, like stuff like that. That is a normal comment now, and that is still trolling. That's still and even if, but the subtext of it is still disrespectful, because the implication is that the person is blaming the victim, the person had done something wrong. So I think you should be attuned to what's a disrespectful discourse or what's a toxic conversation. And it's pretty easy to tell if somebody means well, if they aren't creating harm already, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of the things to piggyback off of the statement about AI, Sam Altman actually said something along those lines where he said, "Hey, I would really love it if people saying thank you and please to our AI agents, because it's costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars in extra compute power.
I, for one,
remember-
support the future AI overlords.
I remember Sam Altman saying that. Definitely definitely AI has been a big part of, I actually did a guest lecture at a conference by American Military University, of last month about AI in the classroom. And I found, I have a unique approach that people are happy to hear about. For example, did you know students will often not use AI if your assignment involves questions about their personal views or their life experience or their work history and stuff like that, that they can talk about themselves a bit. All of a sudden, they're going to ditch AI and write with their own voice. So there's lots of ways you can kind of navigate it, the AI world that I've been getting some experience with. That I think it has been getting me some traction in academic circles with people interested in hearing how they can do it themselves.
I can't remember exactly which university it was, but I believe it was an Ivy League university in the United States. They were advocating for papers to be turned in via a typewriter or handwritten because of the prevalence of AI being used in classroom for written works like that now. Like students were feeling, the ones who actually wanted to do a good job, they were upset that some students were getting away with turning in AI papers and professors were accepting them. So I think for collegiate level education, like it's become a serious issue now where people are passing off their work or people are passing off AI as their own work.
Well, I'm grateful I teach at an art college. Luckily, the amount of AI art I'm getting is very low. A lot of students are taking their art, their careers as artists very seriously, and so they're not actually in it to cheat, really, or else you wouldn't be at a well-regarded art college, or you wouldn't last there very long.
And I'm assuming that they all love NFTs, right?
One of my students broke into NFTs and sold a couple NFTs for a couple $100, and I actually posted him. I actually got him a guest lecture in the Intelligence Community Inc.'s Washington, D.C. Weekly Zoom happy hours during the pandemic. He was a guest lecturer to like 15 guys from the defense industry in D.C. And we're talking guys with like a lot of access who are just at the tips of their seat listening to my art student from Canada. Well, he's from India originally, but I listened to my art student in Canada talking about selling NFTs and his success with selling NFTs. He played a YouTube video of him being interviewed by a successful YouTube influencer and they held a little rave in the metaverse in which they're to celebrate him selling his NFTs. And this is in 2021. A lot of these concepts are kind of outdated now, but for the most part, NFT art is seen as, at this point, kind of a fad that's passed. The interest is in fine art, which is seen as something that will outlast AI for the most part. If you talk to gallery owners, most of them will say that the obliteration of the art community by AI hasn't really happened yet on a level of fine art. The demand has not gone away.
Yeah, when it comes to NFTs being used in that capacity and speaking to the defense industry, I'm so happy that someone has actually talked to them about that because the main point of, I guess, what they mostly believe is that NFTs are being used to launder money from not, I guess, nefarious enterprises. So rather than them being used like, hey, as a novel way to sell art, if you will, they're actually being used to funnel launder money for terrorist organizations, regimes, and others, which I know they're being used for that. It's nice that the defense industry actually heard it from someone who did it legitimately, like it had a passion in it.
Yeah, the money laundering problem is also in conventional art, but in NFTs is especially obvious. There's too much money being thrown around too fast. It's too scary. So I don't try to involve myself in it unless a student involves themselves in it first. You're getting into some cybersecurity issues with NFTs, like how secure is your purchase really? Is a lot of what I'm hearing from people. So I'm definitely not that I'm actually not that interested in NFTs in my own career. However, it comes up from students quite a bit. And of course, as you're aware, an art student in the 2020s is very likely to try to make a quick buck bringing their skills to NFTs. However, the general consensus is that the wave of NFTs, as far as a mainstream movement, it might come back, but it has crashed for now. It hasn't. I've seen some evidence of it making a comeback in art insider circles. For example, I took a course at Sotheby's Sotheby's, the art auction house based in New York and UK. I took a course from them earlier this year, and there was an NFT presentation, and there was a gal in the who presented about how NFTs are still kind of simmering as a market in the art world. However, that's just not reaching the grassroots of the art community like people thought it would. NFTs have not really eclipsed the rest of the art community, and they have also kind of fallen quite a bit from journalists' radar.
Yeah, cryptocurrency, NFTs was one of the things I had a huge passion for a couple of years ago. Now I actually teach sometimes, so it's a fantastic investigative practice if you've never gotten into it for cryptocurrency, but it is quite I won't say nascent anymore, but it's still misunderstood by a lot of investigative circles, especially some law enforcement at the local or regional level.
All right, now is time for one of my favorite questions that we do during interviews, and this is where like you get to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Like if you're working on something you want everybody to be on the lookout for, if there's something that like you've already accomplished that just made you really happy or proud of the work that went into it. Yeah, so what do you just, anything that you're currently working on or something you want to talk about just so everyone gets to know you a little bit more?
Well, I mean, speaking to y'all today, it has jumped out at me that I have a very varied career that maybe doesn't appear to gel holistically in this short an interview. But it is just bound together by me being a mental health advocate in propaganda studies. You studied propaganda on a master's level and an unfinished doctoral level at LSU and at Exeter in the UK. Actually, I have two unfinished attempts at a PhD, which I both dropped out due to mental health reasons. And so I basically gelled together a varied career that is bound together kind of cohesively by being a mental health advocate in propaganda studies, and it all kind of goes from there. So I like to say that something I get complimented on is that I've had a varied career. I really recommend it to young people. We're entering a very tough labor market where a lot of young people don't have any hope of being hired at all. And so the best thing you can do is to really just take a scattershot approach to seeing where you can get small wins where you can.
I absolutely agree. One of the things that happened to me recently was my career took a little sidestep, and I had to start reaching out, pursuing other opportunities as well. With that, if people would like to connect with you, where are you most active at on social media or in real life, IRL?
Absolutely LinkedIn. I am proud to say I am now approaching 6,000 LinkedIn followers, and I got all that through hard work. I'm absolutely happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn and happy to be a super connector, if you will, and connect you with my network on LinkedIn.
So LinkedIn has become a haven for OSINT enthusiasts now. Before it was like Twitter was really huge about 4 years ago, and then with the transition after Elon took over, a lot of people started flocking to LinkedIn and Blue Sky. So it's been great for connecting.
I have like 7 or 8 LinkedIn followers, so I mean, just let me brush my collar.
I'll make sure we'll connect you with Jay.
This will be the last thing I ask you before you give final thoughts and we sign off here. What's your favorite thing about Canada, dude?
I think my favorite thing about Canada is it has a bit of an American vibe to it. So sort of the best of America and the best of Europe in one country. So you can have a kind of American culture, but a European standard of living. And that means a lot to me because to live in an immigrant melting pot, to live in a successful immigrant experiment, and to live in a country where sexual and economic freedoms are taken very seriously, but also a country where I have good health care, and a country where defense is taken seriously. It isn't a taboo, but also a country where the art college is unlikely to shutter any day now. So I think I love going back to the U.S., but I feel Canada is a nice balance, having seen both quite a bit.
Excellent. Anything else, Chris?
No, that's it. That's the last question I had, man.
I actually saw a video today. It was like, I think it's like a trend going around on TikTok and some shortened video formats, where there was a question of like, hey, had there ever been any UK youngsters that ever dreamed about growing up in America? And a majority of them said, yeah, I would love to do that, like when they were younger. And then you ask American children the same thing, they go like, why would we want to go to Britain? Like it's so weird. And I'm just like, I would love to live there. Like their standards of living have gone so high, and like just in general, like health protections and economic and workplace protections are so much better than we have in the United States right now. So absolutely agree with you on that. Canada would be, if that's the way Canada is, definitely better than the United States in my opinion when it comes to workplace and health insurance. But Jay,
I try to encourage people to move to Canada from wherever in the world, so I get to hang out with them.
we would love to come and visit you. A little cold for my wife. My wife loves a humid, arid, warm environment.
Yeah, I gotta wait till it's warm.
Yeah.
I don't.
I enjoy-
You're always welcome to visit.
Yeah, I enjoy
Yeah.
it cold. Jay, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time. Your wealth of experience will be huge for our listeners. And if you'd like to follow Jay, his links will be down in the description for this podcast episode. Please connect with him, ask him questions. Just like everyone in academia and in journalism, he loves interviewing and connecting with people. So make sure you reach out. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please let us know. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. And this has been Chris and Tim on the OSIN Output.
Tim and Chris.